right, welcome back to a very interesting set of conversations that is leading our way into future. Now, female talent in STEM. Now, I feel like a millennial sometimes when I speak of this terms and not the actual word, but yes, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, inspiring the next gen women leaders. Now, if you're listening, this is the place for you to seek if you want to advance and looking to be a leader someday, which I am sure all of you are. Well, a few women in the past have chosen the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics as mainstream career in India, leading to a fewer women leadership representation in this space. Accomplished women from different industries brainstorm the challenges and potential solutions for inspiring the younger generation explore careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Now, it's been the vast subject. Well, that means you will get a lot from it. So let's get straight into it. Please welcome our panelists with a big round of applause. Joining us is Managing Director, Mashreq Bangalore, Mohua Sengupta. Along with that, we have Senior Director, Data Governance and Regulatory Technology for PayPal, Deepa Madhavan. Joining the two is Chief Technology Officer, Godrej Housing Finance, Jyothirlatha B. Along the three, we have Sarah Goss, Head of Innovation, Ericsson, Australia and New Zealand. Joining the four, we have Arpita Das, Director, IT Kohler, Kitchen and Bath, India and Digital Delivery. And of course, joining the five is Dipti Vaishnav, Managing Director and Automotive Industry Lead, Accenture, India. And to moderate a set of finest leaders, we have none other than Ms. Nirmala Menon, Founder and CEO of Interweave Consulting. Nirmala, on to you.
Thank you, Miten. Thank you very much. And greetings of the day to everyone, wherever you're joining in from. And welcome to this conversation on women in STEM, inspiring the next gen women leaders. My name is Nirmala Menon, like Miten said, and I'm absolutely my proud privilege to be here with this group of amazing 6 women who, despite all the challenges that we've heard about in the STEM space, have thrived and flourished and established a name for themselves. Right? So who better to get ideas for things to make life easier for the next generation of women leaders. I am not going to individually read out their profiles because, and they don't need great introduction. I'm sure most of you know them or have heard of them. But if I were to do that, it would take the entire 40 minutes. They all have very accomplished profiles. So I will skip that. You can go look at the website, or maybe Supriya can put this on the chat or something. So I'm going to skip that and go straight into the questions. I will use my privilege as the moderator to ask the first set of questions, and then I really do want to leave some time for the audience to get their questions in, right? So without much ado, we'll go straight in. My first question is to Deepa. Deepa, we constantly hear that one of the major reasons why women are deterred from getting into or majoring in STEM subjects is primarily because of the popularly held beliefs or myths about women not having a science and math brain, or it doesn't fit their gender role expectations, etc., etc. Is it really that deters women? And what could be the enablers or influencers to change that thinking?
Yeah, so thank you, Nirmala. First of all, very happy to be here. So thank you so much for inviting me, and it's great to meet all the co-panelists. So back to your question, in terms of kind of the barriers or the biases that society itself places on girls or women joining STEM. I think there's really nothing that deters girls or women in general, right, about the math and science brain. There's nothing that can't be learned, right? I'm definitely an example of somebody who did economics in undergrad and then moved on to a master's in computer science. But however, generally the trend in people and girls as well, you can classify, is that they just, whatever they're more familiar or comfortable with is what they ended up choosing to study, right? And so it starts right from the very beginning of where the girl is most comfortable with. So every one of us here in some ways contributes knowingly or unknowingly to create some levels of biases, right? So a simple example could be when the child is, a little girl, we even as we, gift a niece or a nephew a toy, we would tend to give the girl a doll and the boy a science kit, or a robotics set, to play with. It just starts right there. Think of the biases we're bringing into the picture and how we're kind of fueling this, this monster of a problem that we are discussing today, right? And the natural instinct for all of us unknowingly is to create stereotypes and biases without really intending to. We never set out to do it, but our actions, what we say, what we do, how, what are things we watch, what do we buy, unknowingly sets out a bunch of, feelers into the, into the universe of, of girls and boys. And so I think it starts there. I don't think we should really, categorize it as being a math or science brain. And I think the other thing is also introspect for all of us and see where are the changes that we can bring in simple actions, simple things that we take back with us and we can apply to our daily life and realize what is it that we are sending out and stopping girls from becoming more familiar with it. They need to get more comfortable with technology from an early age. And that ends up having to create a lot of familiarity and comfort. Now, there are also another, other side of it is what does the ecosystem do? So, companies and organizations like your forum today, kind of brings these kind of issues to the forefront, and we discuss it and we realize, hey, maybe I'm doing something differently. I could make a change, right? And organizations like PayPal and other ones that actually, create a broader effect for girls in tech by having, programs that, reach out to girls and women. And so making them more familiar, I think that is probably the biggest thing, is not creating biases unknowingly and stereotyping them, and then just making girls and women more familiar with it. And, like I have an example of somebody who actually pivoted and changed course from a non-STEM to a STEM, field. And so I think that's probably our biggest kind of enabler, is being enablers and influencers ourselves and not being unknowingly being barriers.
Okay, so you believe there's a lot of responsibility that all of us carry as women?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that would be, it would be interesting to hear from Sarah on this. You represent a different geography, Sarah, and do you find things very similar, or in what ways are things socioeconomically, culturally, or emotionally different in other regions?
Yeah, thanks, Nirmala. It's great to be joining you all from Melbourne. As many of you would be aware, Australia, it's an advanced economy, a Western culture, with actually a highly educated population where, in fact, women are graduating with degrees at higher rates than men. But in every other dimension, as measured in the kind of global gender gap index, we've actually been going backwards, and that's been a trend for the last 15 years. And picking up on what Deepa said, it does relate to those ingrained biases and the gender stereotypes, this idea of male breadwinner and female homemaker, where the men go out and work and have careers and the women stay at home, or if they do work, they still have to juggle the majority of at-home responsibilities in addition to their careers. And I know we're talking about STEM today, but at a fundamental level, I think what would help is if we were able to abandon those broader gender stereotypes. I think that would help to change perceptions and see women better represented in STEM fields. And if I think about, what does that look like? I think it means more men taking time out of the workforce to raise children, more men sharing responsibility for caring for aging parents, and even for relationships where there are no children or no dependents, having more men sharing the so-called mental labour connected with just managing life, running the household, doing the administration of errands, sharing the day-to-day cooking and cleaning, all these types of things. I mean, I truly believe that we're not going to have gender equality in the STEM workforce or even at work anywhere until we actually have gender equality at home. And at the same time, when we focus on or look at realms like academia, in industry, in workplaces, we also need to show that all types of people can succeed. In Australia, there are more men named Peter, John and David who run Australia's top 200 companies than there are women CEOs in total. And the point being is there isn't only one type of leader. When I was promoted to the Ericsson executive leadership team, I was one of only 2 women. I was the only person under the age of 40 at the time. I was the only non-white person. I was the only part-timer working 3 days a week. I was the only mother and I was the only single parent. But I was an executive leader in a multinational. So, you know, we need to see more diverse examples and role models like that, I think.
That's amazing, Sarah. It's very, very interesting. But in, you know, having said that, what do you think you would give as advice to your younger self, now having experience and having the wisdom of, you know, having traversed that path? Is there something that you would say differently to your younger self?
What I didn't know when I was younger was the sense of self-confidence that has come as I've gotten older. So what I would say to my younger self is, your difference is your strength. Embrace it and lean into it. And I would also say, there's this great saying, it's feel the fear, then do it anyway. I definitely suffered from imposter syndrome. So I would say to my younger self, feel the fear, then do it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, really interesting, because I think it also connects to what Deepa was saying in terms of, with, you know, girls being given choice that are, you know, very gender role specific, and boys being given, you know, medical kits or chemistry sets, etc. So I think a lot needs to change, because this lack of confidence also tends to come from there, and that's possibly one of the deterrents as well. Moving on to Jyothi. Jyothi, you went into engineering early and have stuck with that, and you know, you are the CTO of your organization. What motivated you or influenced you? It would have been easy as a woman to say, I don't want to do, you know, STEM. People would have accepted it given our culture. What is it that motivated you to go down the untrodden path, so to say? What influenced you?
Thanks, Nirmala. Very interesting question, in fact. So in my opinion, first of all, women should know their true potential, and while taking the decisions on their career or maybe on picking up the subjects and all, they should follow their passion. So because I am a female, I can't do this, or because I am a female, I can't go to this particular course. That is a thought that you should be removing from your mind at all. So I feel the fear of failure is one of the things that actually, you know, limits our, you know, the passion. So that should be removed from our mind, and that should be the success. That will be the success mantra for all the you know, younger generation. That's what I feel. So I followed my passion, and while I was picking up my engineering subject, because I was it was around 25 years back or whatever. So you can understand how many engineers, you know, how many female engineers were you know, actually being encouraged. So in my family, I wanted to be the first female engineer. So that's how I wanted to be in that particular profession, and fortunately my family supported. But I have seen many of the families who were actually at that point in time telling the kids, saying that you pick up this XYZ subject, that would be easy for you to, you know, pursue your career. You don't have to struggle, you don't have to go you know, out, and you don't have to do the field work, you don't have to do this and that, and it will be very easy for the female. But people who have not followed, I have many of my friends in my at that particular same batch and all, I can see they're very successful and they're very happy today. So I feel when I started my career, I started with few doubts whether I would be successful, not successful, whether I would be able to, you know, sustain this late number of hours, whether I can do take it decisions, I can do these kind of negotiations well or not. So all these doubts were there in the mind. But once I started the career, and after few years into that, now today I realize basically any role is just a role, and I don't think it can have any kind of gender subtype attached to that. And the second thing is like credibility of talent is not gender based at all, and I'm lucky to have worked with organizations that gave equal opportunities and, you know, provide environments for bouncing back also. Because women being women, there will be some kind of breaks would be required, and that bouncing back environment would very much required for the women to succeed. And I feel women by nature are more courageous and are inclined towards data-based decisions and more empathetic, and also make the correct decisions is what I feel, without having to go with some kind of a superlatory or nature type of information and all. So that makes them collaborate better way for successful outcome. This is what is my experience.
Okay. You said you would have been possibly one of the very few students on campus, for example, and that would have been the same story as you moved into the workplace as well. Have you noticed if women in general, and you in particular, probably because your experience, see that you contribute or in a different value to the discussion compared to your male counterparts? Is there a, because we hear that men and women's brains are wired differently, and that's the value that women bring to the table. Have you seen that in practice? Have you experienced it?
So many of the times, as I think Sarah also mentioned, most of the times in the room, you would be the only female member, be it a meeting or be it in a conference. And mostly in the conferences, we see very, very few women. And in that, when any discussions, group discussion or something happen, we see women who are the minority people who are there are more, towards actually talking to the point, not as, just not as a gossip type of thing and all, just to keep the actual subject in mind and then talk to the point and make their point. And I don't really see any kind of, I'm not saying that this is actually a trait, and you can't be actually saying that all the male people are, will be a kind of a gossiping or doing this kind of thing, and all the female are kind of, will be sticking to the point or not. But most of the cases, we have seen these kind of traits in women more, and because of that, they will be kind of in the decision making and making their point, proving their point. So there I have seen good value add from our side.
Okay, thank you. Now, Arpita and Deepa, you said that you'd started off as a non-STEM major and then sort of moved into computer science. And Arpita, you didn't start off with a science major either. What is it? Let me ask you why you didn't do that. Just to understand what was influencing your decision at that time, and what is it that got you interested and made you move into a STEM career?
So yeah, so I think that generally we tend to talk about the STEM and non-STEM as two separate boxes, and I really don't think there's any limit to, what you can or cannot do. It's just sometimes we make these choices very, very early on in life, right? So, for me personally, it was when I started off as really, why did I not choose it in the early days is because, the exposure I had, what I talked about earlier, the people around me, my friends, we were all going after similar kind of subjects, and we kind of wanted to stay together. All of influences, other influences I had were gravitating towards a non-tech area, right? So I think there's a couple of points I would like to make on this, right? It's first of all, it's never late to change. Like mine, obviously, we're talking about something happened like 25 years ago when I started off learning or going through a degree and so on. But today there's so many opportunities. I had to do a master's in computer science to kind of jump over to, if you say the other side of the fence. But today there's so many opportunities. There's, boot camps available for various languages. There's access to education through Coursera, Udemy, any types of where you can go and actually learn a programming skill way easier than you ever did in the past, right? So today there's really no, nothing that stops you from changing course, right? So early on I had to do it mainly because that's what I was exposed to. That's what I thought everybody around me was doing, and therefore I went that way. But today you even find people who are doctors who are now programmers, or nutritionists who run large tech companies. There's nothing that kind of boxes you. We are trying here to shatter glass ceilings. So we're not trying to put ourselves into boxes of what we did many, many years ago. Now, the pandemic has also made technology so much more accessible for us, and it's even more kind of everybody has access to. So, even more easier to kind of change fields or switch fields and so on and so forth. Personally, for me, the reason I kind of jumped over or, made that big shift at that point was because I moved to the Bay Area, and the Silicon Valley at the time was going through a massive .com boom. And it was very exciting. So you almost felt like you were left behind if you didn't jump onto that bandwagon. So I very enthusiastically jumped in, and I really have no regrets for either one, right? Either way. I think the point is you can be successful anywhere. Beyond a point, really, nobody's going to ask you about what your education was. As long as you're proving yourself consistently, you're doing a great job. I think really sky's the limit, right? I don't think we need to limit ourselves to what we studied or we decided many decades ago.
Which is very true, especially in today's environment where things are constantly changing and shifting. Yeah. Absolutely important to do that. Arpita, your story on this. Arpita? I think her screen is frozen probably. Can you hear us, Arpita?
Nirmala and hello, can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but your screen was frozen. Yeah. Would you like to go off screen if the audio is going to work?
I had kind of in 11th and 12th decided to study economics. So I had economics in my 11th, 12th as well. And then I did my undergrad in economics. But I think in those 3 years, I realized that economics, doing an MA in economics or pursuing further studies in economics was not something that I wanted to do in future. And there were two paths open to me, either get into a management area or to get into some other professional areas. So I appeared for masters in computer application and masters in business administration, and fortunately I got through to masters in computer application, and I joined it without thinking much about it. My only thought process was that no, I do not want to be in academics. I do not want to pursue economics any further. And that's how I got into it. I think today the children, whether it is boys or girls or women, they know what they want to do pretty early in life because of the exposure to information that they have. And to some extent, they have people like us to look up to, can guide them. So these choices are no longer, things don't happen to them because they don't know what they need to do, but they do things because they know what they want and do exactly the same thing. So that's what I have seen in my last 10, 15 years, that how things have changed. Earlier, it was, your influencers, your friends, your parents telling you what you want to do and what you should do. Now, I think it is a completely different ballgame where the kids are very clear as to what they want to do and they know how to go about doing it.
Would that be a limited group of kids that you're talking about? Because the larger part of our country, for example, has really not changed that much. They continue to get very similar messages, isn't it?
I really don't know, because when when I go to Calcutta, and then there are small villages around Calcutta, and I feel very happy. Even my house help who was there, her daughter, she was very, very clear, and she stays in a small village in Calcutta, near Calcutta, that she wanted to pursue a career in STEM, and she did that, which is, I think, commendable. So it is no longer the educated section of the society who is thinking in a particular way. But I am seeing a lot of changes happening even at the grassroots levels also.
Yeah, which is, I think, in a sense, bound to happen with technology reaching our homes and all of us engaging with it in so many intimate ways of communication and everything. It certainly is going to make a difference, I would believe. So one should be optimistic about that. Okay, yes. Over to Mohua and Dipti. Let's get them on board on this discussion. As senior women in the STEM arena, have you at any time felt the impact of gender in any way, either positively or negatively? And was there a time when you wondered, what am I doing here? Should I be here? Have you ever reevaluated your decision to be in STEM? We'll start with Mohua and then come to Dipti.
So first of all, thank you, love. I mean, I was engrossed hearing all your stories. So for me, I would say absolutely yes. And that's because, see, there is bias. There is conscious or unconscious, as we all have been talking about, there is bias, but positive. I mean, for me, I would say 95% of the time, and I think it's true for everybody, 95% of the time it's positive. There are that 5% negative experience, and I'll tell you where we face it most. More than, oh, girls, you can't understand STEM or you can participate in it. I have seen bias more when you walk into the boardroom and you are alone. People look at you and they think, oh, that's a diversity candidate. Or you get a job, you get a promotion over others, people look at you as a diversity candidate. And I think it's not just people's or the social problem, it is also partially how we are driving this agenda. Most companies, we drive it as a number target, instead of bringing in, okay, whoever is the best candidate. And I know that some part of it is necessary because there are very few women But I think that is causing that kind of negativity to some extent. But otherwise, mostly 95% has been positive. And I think in my case, at least, while I'm in a STEM company, I'm a business person. So I'm different, not just as a woman in the STEM world, but also a business person in a world of techies. So I have typically gotten a good hearing from people, because people do understand that there is an importance, that the business side of technology is what drives technology. So far, overall, my experience has been mostly good. So can't complain.
Yeah, great. Okay, Dipti? Okay, she isn't on the screen. What reminded me, Mohua, we'll wait for Dipti to come on board, is my first job was with an oil company 40 years ago. So that was way, way, way back. And clearly there weren't too many women in the space. And I remember making my business card as N Menon and not Nirmala Menon, because I didn't want my gender to show. My signature is still N Menon. And 2 years down, I realized it was good to be a woman, because people were curious about who you were. So I changed it to Nirmala Menon. So we learn as we go along what works, right? So if I were to go meet somebody, I sent in Nirmala Menon representing this company. It was like, okay, call her in, let's see her. And then, for whatever the reason, they'll say, okay, we'll meet you next time, fix up a meeting. So
and talk about unconscious bias many a times, because my name is not very common outside of Bengal. Mm-hmm. Many people write to me as Mr. Mohua or Mr. Sengupta, because they just presume that, oh, the MD of a company must be a man.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Dipti, are you there? Okay, maybe we'll wait for her to come back in. So we've always heard about role models, and I think we talked about that as well. When you see women up there, you want to aspire. When you see technology being used everywhere, you believe you can contribute to it, things like that. So in what ways do you think role models are important for Dipti? Did she come back?
Yeah, so
Dipti, we lost you for a minute. Would you like
I'm actually having a STEM issue. I lost electricity at home. So
okay.
Right, so I was just trying to figure out between phones and between my laptop and everything. So
yeah,
right.
So the question to you, Dipti, was about as a woman, have you felt out of place or?
Right. Yeah. So I'll give you a very simple example, and this was I work with automotive clients mostly, and largely come with a very strong sales background. That's where I joined my career. Even I did my management graduate from sales and marketing. But now when you're talking to a client, right, there is a lot that is happening on the product side, the engineering side, and there is this whole electric vehicle and it. But the moment comes to that as a topic, just because of your background, irrespective of the homework that you've done, you've learned that subject, there is a very unconscious bias, and the client always most of the times continues to tell me, hey, you know what, you have an SME around which you can bring in, without even really trying to qualify whether you would know this or would you not know this. And I've heard this, Dipti, this is tech. You may want to get in somebody from your technology practice. And I look at him and I said, yeah, it's tech, but it's not complicated, right? I mean, and I can put the two by two together, which is the business application to tech. You should be okay with it. So it's there. And I think it may not be evident whether it's STEM or otherwise. I think the moment it gets into a complex area, or if it's a lot to do with a lot of hard work, it's assumed that women can't get it easily. And I do see that with a lot of my clients sometimes, but thankfully I've been a part of organizations that have really encouraged it and made sure that we don't go through that, that challenge. So, and just to give another example, I used to have a boss where the CEO said that she may not be fit for a program because this has a lot of technology, this is a lot of consulting. And I think I still respect a partner where he stood up and said, a failure is going to be my responsibility, but the fact that I put her up is the confidence that I have that she can do it. So it's also about the opportunity that gets given to you, Nirmala, and it's also about you standing up to make sure that you make your presence and your stature felt in the room. Yeah.
And this probably is one of the big inequalities that we talk about, the higher pressure on women to have to prove. Because if I fail, then I'm setting the rest of the people that follow to, have to face things that they shouldn't, right? So the pressure is very high and sort of ties into that confidence issue and the imposter syndrome and stuff like that, saying, where is a job? It's a job. Men fail at jobs, and we don't hear so many stories, but a woman fails on a job, it's like a big story, right? Because there's so few women out there and it's so visible to everyone. And then it is like, oh, the woman didn't fit the role. So that's a hard one for us to crack until we get enough numbers in, which then to Mohua's point around getting more women in, even if it means we need to do affirmative action, because unless we have enough women up there also failing and being accepted as, as part of business, like it happens with everybody else, I think we'll still continue to face this problem. Which then brings us to the next question that I was sort of starting on as you signed in, Dipti, is the importance of role models. Role models that succeed, of course, is always an inspiration, but role models that were doing great work but failed are also great role models, right? So as women leaders in your respective areas, in what ways do you think senior women should advocate for the younger lot to come in and make it exciting for them, that this is fun career? It's not a nerdy career like you're made out to be, that, women who take STEM are uninteresting women and things like that. So, how do you think we should advocate for this with the younger generation? Anybody? Yeah.
Okay. So role models are important, STEM or not. I mean, if you see somebody successful, and can do it, that helps. I mean, there have been umpteen studies, right, that somebody who has access to a role model, their chances of success goes up by almost 50%, 100%. It doubles. So it is important. But one thing to also remember is we cannot copy a role model, because everybody's problems are different, lives are different. The way you address a challenge is very different. So just by seeing a role model, all that we should take in is it's possible. If she could do it, I can do it too. To me, role models are important to that extent. And then the direct mentoring helps. So to me, it is very important when we have, 50% of our fresh hires are women, but we don't have too many at the end. So I think there is a very strong role that we all can play in mentoring them to continue to be there, or even if they take a break, to come back. That's where I think the role models who are actually directly mentoring will actually help a lot.
Anybody else would like to add to what Mohua has to say? Sorry about.
I just add a point here. We all have been a parent at some point in time, and I think the way we groom our children and trying to make sure that we establish that there is no differentiation in the way you look at your own peer set, whether it's a girl or a boy, it's the sheer competitive intelligence that is what you're competing against. And that has to be your measure. I think is also going to be a very, very important starting point. And I think the second thing is women empowering women. I think that's a very, very important. I mean, we all talk about it a lot, but in our own careers, I think sometimes we don't do it with 100% of our capacity or what we want to do, right? And that is a very, very big change that will be required. Providing for platforms where you bring in more people, but you're also doing a one-on-one empowerment, even if you're able to change one person's life. I think that's a big contribution. So
I think that's a great point, Dipti. And I was also just thinking, it's not just about women helping women, it's also about getting men into the conversation, right? In what ways have you seen men stepping in? And in fact, even for a lot of women in technology, I've heard them tell me things like, my father was the one that supported me, or, there was this, because men, in a sense, are gatekeepers at homes and in organizations, right? So in what ways do we kind of get them engaged, and how do we involve them? in this?
I think on that, Nirmala, I think the balance has shifted, at least in homes where the parents are educated. I don't think that there is a gatekeeper anymore.
Sarah, Arpita, any of you, any thoughts on this? Anything different that happens in your region?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really interesting point, because women are 50% of the population, and that's what we want to see represented in all facets of life. But the other 50% is the men. So they've got equal part to do. And when I talked earlier about gender stereotypes and that they're unhelpful, they're actually unhelpful to men as much as they are to women. I know a lot of men who want to be able to stay at home with their kids, but it's frowned upon. It's unmanly to do that. And so, yeah, I think that, yes, men have a role to play, but also I think it's not just out of sympathy or to help women out. It's actually, I think, to just lift up the whole of society and for all people to kind of get that balance and that opportunity.
Okay. Yeah, Miten, did you want to say something? Is our time up? I thought we had time till 3:30. We have, right?
You have about next 3 more minutes.
Oh, just 3 more minutes? Okay. Okay. So maybe a quick question to Jyothi. We often hear that women who start with STEM tend to float into non-STEM areas. So they start as an engineer and then eventually move into other parts of the business and are not in hardcore tech or science. And how did you sort of manage that? Did you get that kind of advice? Because some of the women have said things like, they said, now that you have a child, you're married, it's better for you to move into, quality control or, not the mainstream tech.
I myself have this kind of incidents, Nirmala. Thanks for bringing it up. So, especially during, as I rightly mentioned, during that childbirth period and all, people advise you a lot, like you move to quality control roles and you move to this other role at all. But the thing is, momentarily, you may tend to, look for these kind of roles to, give more, time for your personal life or whatever. But I also did like that. But that's what in the last question I mentioned, that bouncing back opportunity, that coming back to the mainstream where actually your passion lies. That was the opportunity I was given, and thanks to all my mentors and all my coaches and all that point in time who have supported me. So this kind of support structure would be required for women to to balance work life also, and at the same time pursue their passion. This is what from my side.
Now that Miten showed up and said we have very little time, I have no choice but to have to wind up this great discussion. You were just getting into the depth of it, but thank you very much for your very honest responses, and thank you very much. And of course, as we all know, we can't have half of the world sitting back and not participating in technology and in economic growth of the country. So we really need to go out there and inspire every little girl that we see into this, because some of them will want to wander away anyways, but those who are interested should certainly be encouraged. In our own little ways, we can do that. Thank you very much. Great conversation. Once again, thanks, Miten, and over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you indeed. Thank you to all our panelists. Such an interesting session to us. So much to learn. And, I have been learning so much from a point of view. I'm the only man in the entire platform since afternoon, since the morning, in fact. And
we need to question that, Miten. In fact, when we got the list also, I was thinking we need to have men participate in these conversations as well. Next time around, we should do that.
Absolutely. So there's so much more learning, but I've got, Nirmala, so much more. So quickly, I want to thank all of you. To start with, Nirmala, thank you so much. I think you pulled out the best of conversations and some straightforward conversation, which indeed is the need of the hour. I also want to thank Mohua Sengupta, Deepa Madhavan, Jyothirlatha B, Sarah Goss, Arpita Das, Dipti Vaishnav. Thank you so much, all of you. I wish you great success in the coming year. Go out there, motivate much more. There's so much more to explore, and so much more are listening to you. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a good rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
Well, now, after the interesting conversation among a bunch of great leaders, it puts me back to a bit of history, and history comes in from Hall of Fame. And I'm here again to speak about 2 more ladies who have brought in just not an experience or motivation or life, but technology at most back in the days. Hedy Lamarr, now I'm sure you've heard of this name, was born in 1914, about 100, nearly about 90 years back. Hedy was a famous actress, but her talents did not stop there. She worked on various inventions despite the fact that she did not receive any formal training in technology. Technology, one of Hedy's greatest inventions, and was a secret communication system, a frequency hopping device that she developed with the help of George Antheil. The key objective of this device was to set radio-guided torpedoes, of course, during the war, that became the basis of many modern-day inventions, such as GPS, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth. So you understand the source of it. We're hearing the technology booming now, but all of it was planned back in the days. It's just developing now and coming in front of the mass. Now, the next person who's Hall of Fame and brings in so much more experience is Katherine Johnson. She was born in 1918, about 104 years back. Katherine was one of the 3 Black students to attend West Virginia's graduate college and worked at the all-Black computing section for the National Advisory Committee of Aeronautics, that's NACA. Despite being a computer herself, she paved her way to become a team member working on different NASA projects. She resolved the parts that allowed NASA spacecrafts and astronauts to orbit Earth and land on Moon. These 2 major historical events would have not been possible without Katherine. You see who went on the moon, but who was the person behind? So if you're there, I think you should give a big round of applause for the 2 ladies. Of course, Katherine one and Hedy as well. Now I'm going to go on and quickly tell you that we have very interesting booth of our partner Accenture, and they are doing something very interesting by the means of trivia questions where you can win, and you can win a lot. And in case also if you have any question, and trust me, any question if you have, I think it's time you go and ask them, and they will have all the answers possible for you. And having said that, it's 22 minutes past 3. I know it's just drifting from the noon to the evening, and we're ready with the next session, which is going to talk and speak more about what's interesting here at FemTech. So stay with us. We are getting ready for the next one very soon.